In the mid-15th century, the small Principality of Wallachia sat between two predators, the Ottoman Empire to the south and the Kingdom of Hungary to the north. Into this chaos stepped Vlad III, son of Vlad II, better known to history as Vlad the Impaler. From the start, betrayal shaped him. His father was murdered, his brother mutilated, and he himself spent years as a hostage to the Ottomans. But when Vlad seized power, he did not rule as an ordinary prince. He ruled as a man who believed fear was stronger than loyalty. To Vlad, cruelty was not a vice, it was a strategy. His enemies, whether nobles who betrayed him, bandits who defied him, or armies that invaded his land, would be made examples of in ways so terrifying that entire nations shuddered at his name. Vlad understood something few rulers did: terror could do more than kill. Terror could control, intimidate, and paralyze. And so he turned his punishments into theater, spectacles designed not just to destroy his enemies, but to leave behind images no one could forget. This is the story not of a vampire, not of a myth, but of a man who weaponized horror itself. These are the unthinkable things Vlad the Impaler really did to his enemies. The punishment that defined Vlad was impalement. It was not quick, it was not merciful, it was a nightmare drawn out for hours, sometimes days. Victims were forced onto sharpened wooden stakes driven through the body and planted upright in the earth. When done carefully, the stake missed vital organs, prolonging the agony. The condemned would writhe and scream, slowly sliding downward as their body gave way, until death finally claimed them. But Vlad did not use this on a few criminals. He used it on thousands. Whole villages of enemies were impaled at once, their bodies arranged like grotesque forests. Travelers entering Wallachia were met not with city gates but with endless rows of rotting corpses swaying in the wind. The stench alone carried for miles. The most infamous of these displays came in 1462, when the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II marched an army into Wallachia. Outside the capital, the invaders found a field of more than 20,000 impaled corpses, men, women, even children. Hardened soldiers stopped in shock. Some chroniclers claimed the Sultan himself recoiled, declaring that he could not take a country ruled by such a man. The forest of the impaled was not just execution, it was psychological warfare. Vlad did not simply kill his enemies. He turned their deaths into monuments of terror, warnings that echoed louder than any battle cry. When the Ottomans came for him, Vlad knew he could not defeat them with numbers. So he fought with fear. He ordered villages burned to the ground, fields destroyed, and wells poisoned. Civilians were forced to abandon their homes so that the enemy would find only ashes and famine. It was a scorched earth campaign, designed to starve and demoralize. But Vlad's most legendary strike came in the summer of 1462, in what became known as the night attack at Targovist. Under the cover of darkness, Vlad and his men disguised themselves in Ottoman clothing and infiltrated the massive enemy camp. At his signal, chaos erupted. Fires lit the sky, swords slashed through tents, and confusion reigned as Ottomans attacked one another in panic. Vlad himself aimed for the Sultan's tent, narrowly missing his target. Though vastly outnumbered, Vlad inflicted heavy losses and, more importantly, terrorized an army that believed it was invincible. Survivors spread tales of the attack, describing the Wallachian prince as a demon who struck in the night and vanished like smoke. To his enemies, Vlad was not a man defending his land, he was a phantom of horror, turning war itself into a nightmare. Impalement may have been his signature, but Vlad's cruelty extended far beyond the stake. He seemed to delight in inventing punishments tailored to his enemies. Some were boiled alive, their screams rising with the steam. Others were skinned or mutilated. Thieves had their hands cut off, liars their tongues torn out. No crime, no betrayal, went unanswered. One of his most notorious acts came on Easter Sunday. Vlad invited hundreds of boyars, the noble families who had betrayed his father, to a grand feast. As they ate, his soldiers stormed in. Many were impaled on the spot, while others were marched for miles under brutal conditions to build his fortress at Poenary. Few survived. It was revenge served cold, and it destroyed generations of his rivals in one stroke. Even the poor and desperate were not spared. Chroniclers tell of Vlad inviting beggars to a banquet, feeding them well, and then locking the doors and setting the hall on fire. His reasoning? That they would no longer burden society. Whether exaggerated or not, such stories fueled his legend as a ruler whose justice was as horrifying as it was absolute. For Vlad, cruelty was not random. It was a message. Every punishment, no matter how grotesque, was designed to send fear rippling through friend and foe alike. Vlad the Impaler's reign was brief, but the memory of his cruelty outlived him. To his enemies, he was a monster whose name inspired dread long after his death. To many of his own people, he was a stern but just ruler, one who had brought order through terror in a land otherwise consumed by betrayal. Centuries later, his legacy inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula, though the vampire was but a pale shadow of the real man. Vlad needed no fangs or supernatural powers. His cruelty was horrifying enough. The forests of the Impaled, the night raids, the massacres, and the endless parade of tortured bodies cemented him as one of history's most brutal figures. And yet, his legend holds a paradox. Was he a sadist who enjoyed suffering, or a desperate prince who believed terror was the only weapon left to him? In the savage world of the 15th century, perhaps both were true. What cannot be denied is this: Vlad the Impaler did not simply fight his enemies. He annihilated them in body and spirit, turning their deaths into warnings that echoed across continents. And even now, more than 5 centuries later, the question remains: do we fear him because of the man he was, or because we recognize the terrifying truth of what humans will do to survive? Vlad's cruelty was not reserved for invading armies. He wielded terror just as harshly against his own people. The boyar nobles who schemed against him were wiped out in a single stroke, their families destroyed to end centuries of betrayal. Ordinary peasants who broke his strict laws were executed publicly, their bodies left as warnings. It was said that under Vlad, a golden cup could be left unattended at a public fountain, and no one dared to steal it. For merchants, this was a golden age of security. For thieves, it was a death sentence. The same justice fell upon adulterers, corrupt officials, and even priests who strayed from their duties. Vlad made it clear: no man, no matter his station, was beyond punishment. This relentless rule created an atmosphere of fear that reached into every home. Families whispered in private, careful never to cross the prince's will. Even those who benefited from the peace he created knew it was peace built on terror. In Wallachia, obedience was not inspired by love or loyalty. It was forced by the knowledge that defiance could end not just your life, but your entire family's. Vlad's enemies may have been armies and nobles, but his reach extended to anyone who dared to test him. While Vlad's punishments were real, many of the most gruesome tales came from propaganda. German printers produced pamphlets filled with shocking stories of his cruelty, stories that spread across Europe like wildfire. They described feasts surrounded by dying victims, cauldrons filled with the boiled, and countless impaled bodies blackening the sky. Some of these accounts were exaggerations, fueled by political rivals who wanted to paint him as a monster. Yet they resonated because they contained enough truth to be believed. Vlad had already earned his reputation. The printed word only magnified it. In Russia, chronicles portrayed him as a stern but just ruler, a man who restored order through fear. In the West, however, he was seen as a mad tyrant who reveled in blood. These competing images, hero to some, monster to others, cemented his place in history. Centuries later, Bram Stoker would take inspiration from these tales when creating his novel Dracula. Though The Vampire was a work of fiction, its roots lay in the terrifying legend of Vlad the Impaler. Propaganda did not simply report what Vlad had done, it ensured that his cruelty would echo for generations, shaping how the world remembers him even today. In the end, Vlad's reign ended much as it began, surrounded by betrayal. After years of conflict, he was captured and imprisoned by the Hungarians, his throne taken from him. Though he eventually returned to power, his enemies never stopped circling. Not long after reclaiming his rule, Vlad was killed in battle. Accounts differ on how he fell. Some say it was at the hands of the Ottomans, others claim he was betrayed by his own boyars. What is certain is that his head was sent to the Sultan in Constantinople, displayed on a spike as proof that the dreaded Impaler was finally dead. Yet even in death, Vlad achieved what he wanted most. His enemies never forgot him. The forests of impaled bodies, the burning villages, the massacres, and the endless cruelty became his legacy. He had ruled by fear, and that fear outlived him. Today, historians debate whether Vlad was a sadist or a pragmatist, a monster or a desperate leader defending his land. But to his enemies, the truth hardly mattered. To them, he was terror itself, a man who turned cruelty into a weapon more devastating than any sword. And that is why, 500 years later, the world still recoils at what Vlad the Impaler really did to his enemies.